Welcome back to this episode of the Forecourt Tech podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Jan Harman Ackerman, who is something of a serial entrepreneur, starting in business very young with experience in retail and then on the forecourt before moving into cloud technology. Jan, welcome, first of all, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Just tell us a little bit about your background. So I was fascinated that you've worked in several areas and you've been pretty successful as well.
That's always a judgment up to someone else, but I started very young indeed. And I started already 25 years ago with a full digital internet agency. And that's a little bit where my origin is. I'm fully digital orientated and started with an internet agency. And from 2005 till 2011, we sold on quite large scale household electronics in the Netherlands and in Belgium. And there I gained some experience in digital retail and also a little bit in physical because we had 9 locations where people could get their consumer electronics combined with internet sales.
So, what brought you into the forecourt industry? Because I know there's a bit of a story there as well.
It's more or less like a coincidence after selling our consumer electronic business in 2011. We've invested in some properties, and one of that properties had a permit for a forecourt for a gas station. And that's how we in 2015-16 totally by coincidence ended up in this sector.
And then most people in the Netherlands and Benelux would know you for ThankYou, but I know you're working on other things as well. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about ThankYou. What does it do, first of all? What's the challenge that you're solving?
As ThankYou, we're a retail chain, a fuel retail chain with a known network of gas stations. And we're way more digital orientated than most of the other parties in the market. Because we don't have a history in selling fuel, as an outsider, we came into the sector in 2016, January 2016. And from day one, we said we're convinced that the next decade, a lot will change in this sector. And we have a huge job on the energy transition. Mobility will rapidly change in the next decade. So from day one, we've been convinced that we need to build a digital relationship with our customers at the forecourt so we can help them in the next decade to shift to other forms of mobility or to shift from energy sources from, for example, fossil to EV. And that's why we're highly digital orientated and totally redesigned the perspective of setting up a fuel station, at least from our opinion.
So, if you start with the customer, because I've seen some of your technology in action, you've got things like customer loyalty, payment, you're making it easy for people to just drive up to the gas station or the EV charger. Just tell us a little bit about why you've approached things that way round. And as a consumer, I totally understand that you're stopping me having 15 loyalty cards, or worse, I've forgotten the loyalty card that I need for this particular gas station. Just talk to me a little bit about why you've approached it in that way.
By ending up buying a forecourt, totally don't knowing anything from this business, you never realized how many people are stopping at our forecourts every day. So when we got that permit and I deep dived a little bit into the forecourt sector, the petrol sector, it fascinated me that we have a very huge amount of visitors every day on a forecourt. 70% of the customers on a forecourt are returning. For example, every 10 days they're refueling their car because they're traveling 20 miles every day to work. And they normally do it on Tuesday between 5 and 5:15 p.m. back from work. Except when it rains, then they do it the next morning before they go to work. And we're from a data origin. In our consumer electronic business, we were already from day one very data orientated. And that was what triggered me a lot. And it was combined by some investigations of an American university who did a study for Amazon in 2015 for the Amazon Go shops. And in that study, I read that supermarkets are the highest retention locations worldwide, and that was why Amazon orientated for the Amazon Go concept for supermarkets. But that gas stations worldwide are standing on the second place. It fascinated me more and more. Because from marketing perspective, I always learned, and I also experienced in our digital consumer electronic sales, that keeping an existing customer is always way cheaper than acquiring a new one. And when you zoom out a little bit, it's for certain that the next decade a lot will change, not only for us as operators, owners, but all especially for our customers. And that's where we said if we then want to start building a new gas station, then it should be highly digital, and our goods are just the commodities. But people are coming to our forecourts because of the digital customer journey, the digital relationships we're building with.
So, if I understand you correctly, you started as an operator.
Yeah,
You had to build some of the technology to run that operation. And
yes.
then you realized actually there's a lot of value in this technology we're building. And now you are, presumably, you're selling that to other operators. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. That's correctly indeed. Yeah, yeah. Thank You is the retail brand in the Netherlands. We started in 2016. And when we started our journey, we said if you want to start a digital relationship with the customer, it first all starts at the customer, because the customer needs to register itself. So you need to make some kind of a loyalty scheme that's that attractable for customers to opt in and to register themselves. And from there on, we've expanded the services to our customers. In the end, we're just a bunch of ideas with a big fascination for what we're doing, for patterns and for data. And it's not the fossil that makes our blood flood faster. Our investments in IT increased that much that we said, is it even profitable to earn it back only with our own retail chain? Or can we better open it up and share our technology with other networks in the market? And that's what we did by the end of 2019. Yeah.
So just before COVID, that's when you started to open up. And how has that gone? Because there are standards out there, aren't there, for technology, APIs and things, but you're talking about much more powerful capability, which I would think if you're a new operator gives you a much faster time to market with some of the services you're talking about. If you're an existing operator, it's a way of reducing your costs because it might not be something that you particularly want to invest in, and you're getting the benefit of ThanQ working with so many different providers. Was starting to sell this technology to other operators a good thing right before the pandemic, or was it a difficult thing?
Timing could have been better, of course, due to COVID and due to the pandemic. But now is split off our technology part by the end of 2019. And nowadays you can just see ThanQ as our own retail chain. It's just one of the 30 oil companies using our technology at this moment, and it's one of the front runners. We always explain to our networks that we are able to test and to finalize propositions in our own retail network. We're not just a software agency operating for others. No, we know exactly the business by our own, and we're on daily basis, we're automating our own story.
So you're eating your own dog food or drinking your own champagne. What
Exactly, exactly.
I love those phrases, good American phrases. So the service that people can tap into, I think you've got a different name, haven't you? So ThanQ is the retail chain in the Netherlands.
Yes.
What are you marketing yourselves as for the software services?
ThanQ is our own retail chain indeed, and we're delivering our software service, our cloud platform, under the brand name of MoveU. So in 2019, the companies are totally been split up. They also are different shareholder relationships and are totally Chinese walls between them nowadays. And MoveU is a completely independent organization delivering our cloud technology. And ThanQ is just one of the prime users of it.
Fantastic. I'm interested in what your observations are about what consumers do. So I always think when you talk about technology or a service, you have to be careful not to just apply it to your own life. And I know that for me, not surprisingly, it's about convenience. In fact, I would almost say I get irritated if things don't work the way I expect or if it's not a smooth process. But just give us a little bit of insight. So you said you'd got 30 operators using the software technology. What kind of size of operation does that mean in reality? How many forecourts? And then what are consumers really doing that might surprise us?
I think that the most important is vision to the future. And I think that's also what makes our customers or other networks decide using our technology. We always explain it like every euro we spend in our digital company, and we spend it based on the vision that we're truly convinced that energy and mobility will merge into one customer proposition somewhere in the next decade. And nowadays, most of the petrol stations are just delivering fuel or washing your car or have a convenience store related to the fuel. But we truly believe that over a decade, every consumer, totally on a different way, is using mobility and energy. And that if you zoom out a little bit, that you see quite a huge digitalization process in our sector going on that has a lot of synergies with the processes you saw, for example, in the telecom and the television markets 15 years ago. And if you had 15 years ago a regular household somewhere in Western Europe, you had an analog phone line, you had a phone provider, you had an internet provider, you had your first cell phone operator, you had a subscription for your first television, your cable provider, for example. You saw that in just a matter of years, all that services became way too small to survive, and that just within 5 years, all that services have been merged together. And nowadays, we only have one provider for all the connectivity behind our front door, and it's only one monthly subscription. And when you look to our sector from that perspective, I believe you can see exactly the same movements happening now in our sector. Because by just unlocking the pump digital by paying by phone, it's not needed anymore to go into that convenience store to gain access to the fuel. By just stepping into a bus or a train with your MasterCard or credit card, it's not needed anymore to buy an exclusive bus ticket at the bus company or the train company at the vending machine. No, it's quite easy, accessible, and you can just hop on, hop off every public transport modality. And when you're looking to, for example, shared scooter operators or other mobility operators, giving you access to the modality, 9 of the 10 times goes quite simple through a digital platform or an app that just opens up the scooter or the taxi. And that's why we believe that all that services will merge more and more together. And also energy in the Netherlands and in the West European countries have grown rapidly. But if you're very honest and you look into energy, it's a digital product. You buy and you sell the energy. It's not a molecule that you give from the one to another. No, it's just a digital proposition. So we're fully convinced that in a decade, as a customer, you have a platform or you have an app, you connect your solar panels to it, you connect your wall charger to it. We automatically declare your own consumer generation and your own usage. And if you're having also a hybrid car because you're driving long ranges, you're filling your car at the related gas stations your provider has connections to, and you're just grabbing the nozzle. And based on geofence and license plate recognition, the pump is automatically released. And you're not paying instantly anymore at the moment you're refueling. No, that platform provider on the background is automatically declaring all your mobility usages over the total month. And on the end of the month, bills you at once all your mobility consumption and your energy consumption. And it gives a lot of advantages for the customer. It gives a lot of ease and insights. It gives a lot of advantages for employers because it's way easier to declare your work-related miles because it's stored all quite well. And the most important thing is that it gives you the possibilities to steer on decarbonization.
I think it's quite an exciting future. I think also for a lot of consumers, it's an area of confusion at the moment. So there is an opportunity for somebody like you to simplify it. I'm interested as well about the experience that people have right now with the MoveU technology. So you were telling me before we came on air about gamification. It's one thing to have a technology, it's another thing to get people using it. Certainly in the UK at the moment, there is a really big drive that you get cheaper sandwiches or cheaper coffee if you've got the loyalty card. So it's almost like a reverse psychology. If you walk into a convenience store or the big supermarkets here and you don't have their loyalty card, you're automatically paying more, and you know it because they're telling you at every opportunity. So that's why you need the loyalty card. I'll be honest, it's a bit irritating, but you've done some clever things to onboard people to drive up the number of subscribers for your services. Can you just tell us a bit about that gamification at the pump, but also all the loyalty side of it as well?
We do that, for example, at the Thank You Network by having a lottery mechanism on the pump where we give away prizes from flat screens to traveler checks, or we even gave away a Volkswagen Ups once. And with every liter you're refueling, we have integrated touchscreens in the pumps, and we've built it a little bit like a ticker that's now saying you're now 51, 52, 53 times making chance on this flat screen. Just press on the touchscreen, fill in your email address, subscribe, and the next time you come into the forecourt, you don't have to identify yourself by a loyalty card or something else. No, we automatically recognize you based on a combination of the weight of the vehicle, the license plate, and some identifiers. And we're able to greet you on the pump and saying on the screen, "Hi Ralph, cool that you're here again," and fully individualize the customer journey on the forecourt.
So in the future, I imagine my partner, for example, could drive her car into the forecourt and it's my account that pays for it because the car is recognized. Just fill up the car. I'm also interested in the EV side of things. So I know the Netherlands, like a lot of Western countries in particular, is really pushing on the EV front. Has that changed behavior at all? So if I come into an EV charging station, I mean, like we were just saying, you're enabling the fossil fuel refilling at the pump. So I don't have to go into the convenience store. But I imagine with EV charging, because I've got a bit longer, actually one of the things I can do is go into the convenience store. So are you seeing any differences in how people behave?
I think the advantage of the Netherlands market and the Belgian market nowadays as well, and the Scandinavian markets, are that they have already quite developed EV markets. And indeed, EV is a fast growing, significant number in our region here. And we're rapidly growing on EV. And that's, I think, also where one of the biggest touch points is. Our cloud platform is just by enabling different kind of techniques into one proposition and on the performance of the forecourt, because we process every transaction, every fuel transaction. So we give them a lot of operational insights throughout of all that data. But the biggest driver why we grow that fast is because I think we've made the puzzle quite well how to integrate EV into your existing business. And what you see here in the Netherlands is that 2, 3 years ago, a company owner had 50 cars, and 48 of the cars were just fossil cars, and he had one or two account managers in a Tesla. And he said, "I'm paying 5,000 euros every month for the diesel, and that's 150 euros for the Tesla. I'm totally not interested in that whole shizzle." But if you now look to our market, you'll see that from that 50 cars, already 10 or 12 or 15 cars are EV cars. And that company owner is not interested in two separate worlds. He doesn't want a fuel administration and a separate EV administration. Now, that company owner, that fleet owner, just wants one integrated customer journey, one portal, one hybrid card that gives you as well access to the fuel for the employees still using fossil cars, as recharging for the people that are driving an EV car. And what he also wants is he wants the same validation on an EV car as we've built it in the last 30 years on petrol. Because on daily basis, we have customers that are asking, how is it possible that I have 10 EV drivers, but two drivers are gaining my interest? Because I know for certain that Peter drives 40,000 miles a year, because last year I increased his lease contract up to 40,000 miles. And I know that Jan is only driving 10 till 15,000 miles a year. Yeah. But how is it then possible that Jan is charging 3 times as much as Peter? And we only have to look for a split second and we say it's quite simple, because Jan's whole family He probably has a daughter that's driving electric now. His wife is driving electric now. And you're paying at home for all the electricity for all of the three cars. And where we spent a decade in limiting fuel fraud by entering PIN codes to the fleet cards, we're now enabling a new world. That's one total freedom world, is one Wild West world, the charging. And what our technology does is combining the traditional mechanisms of the fuel with the new services and give you in one customer journey, in one portal, in one white label app, give you an overview of as well your fossil streams, so all your refuelments of all your company cars, as well as all your EV behavior, but also of all your parking transactions, or if you have 3 or 4 people in your company that sometimes need public transport or needs to fly, all of that modalities are arranged in just one service. And it helps you transforming from just being only a petrol station to way more a mobility provider. And it gives you the possibility to remain relevant for your customer in that fastly moving and changing world.
You neatly bring me to a little game that I'm going to play with you, talking of gamification. So it's called Past, Present, or Future. And I'm interested in the technologies. Let's start with the past. What was the technology that perhaps you thought, no, that's never going to take off, and it did? Or maybe something that you did predict would be huge and it has been?
So everybody is now speaking about mobility hubs, and you never heard that word in 2016. When we entered in 2015-16, the market just came up with loyalty and digital loyalty schemes. Digital payment just came in. I believe all of that innovations are growing quite rapidly into the next years. For me, most of the things you're asking to are still present and future. Yeah.
Let's talk about the present then. What is exciting you at the moment about technology? Not to feed you an answer, but we haven't talked about AI yet. And I imagine that's part of what you're looking at, or maybe that's for the future. But right now, what do you think is exciting in the marketplace?
The total sector is exciting, in my opinion, because the biggest part of Western Europe are relatively small petrol chains. And we have a lot of networks with from 50 till 200, 300, 400 sites that are on worldwide scale are relatively small. And we're truly convinced that a lot will change in the next decade. We believe that the car will be still in 2040 and 2050 the main transportation form, and it will bring you, especially in the rural areas, from A to B. We also believe that there will still be a very large fossil part of the fleet. So it's not that everybody in 10 years is fully driving electric, totally not. But I'm 200% convinced that mixed fleets from several energy sources, that will become key. And I'm also fully convinced that especially the generation that's coming now, the driver of tomorrow, that generation has total different needs and also total different perspectives. They are used way more ease in the way they're served. They are way more used to live subscription based. And last but not least, the driver of tomorrow is way more sensitive for climate change related impact. And yeah, we always compare it to, you can say everything will be remain the same for the next 10 years. But the most simple is if you open up your mobile phone, 5 years ago, you did it with a PIN code. Nowadays, almost 99.1% of the users are opening their mobile phone with facial recognition. Once you have the service and when you started using it and it gives you convenience, you never will stop using it anymore. And I believe that pulling the payment of the service and delivering you the service out of each other, and that's what's happening in the market. And that's where we started. We said for 30, 40 years, the asset, the physical station has been your asset, and that was your unique proposition. And now you're seeing that parties like, for example, our DKV or Mercedes, just directly from the dashboard, can unlock your pump. So that asset is transformed only to a commodity. Yeah, you still have that location and you have that pump, yeah, but the driver is the Mercedes driver that's in that Mercedes and who has the direct customer relation to it. So that means that influences like that will, in my opinion, bring big shifts into our market. Yeah.
And I think I'm right in saying you've got tens of thousands of people using your services already, haven't you? Were talking about the 30 plus operators. Are they mostly in the Netherlands and Benelux, or are you working more widely now as well?
No, we're rapidly enrolling over Europe, but we started in the Netherlands and in Belgium. So we have a lot of operators in the Netherlands and Belgium using our technology. But we're also active now in France, in Southern European countries. We're onboarding the first customers like Spain and Italy. And we're now active in Germany. Way more networks in Western Europe are able to find our technology. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all we've got time for today. But I'm fascinated in the consumer insights as well. So I think there should be a Move You annual report where you tell us what strange and weird and wonderful things we actually do. I don't know if you use Spotify, but they've got their wash up every year, don't they? I forget what they call it, where it tells you all the terrible music from the 80s, in my case, that I still listen to. And also AI now with DJ and things. Do you just finally, do you see that being quite a valuable service in itself, just telling, first of all, the operator networks, obviously, what people are doing. But I think it's fascinating because we don't even realize what our own behaviors are, do we?
No, it is. And we're rapidly developing, and AI is also from huge influence also in our company. But throughout of the data in our platform, you can predict a lot of things and you can also steer people in their behavior. And for example, we're now active since 2016, but everybody who's buying, we now know quite well after that 7, 8 years that some people are buying, for example, Uralf is buying every 3 years a new car. And that car is always a Mercedes. So we already can predict based on the past that probably next spring you will buy a new car. And if we see that your behavior is changing a little bit, we also are able to predict. We know that Ralph connected his solar panels, but he's still driving fossil. But there's a huge chance that he will make the shift to EV. So and in the end, it's all to serve the customer better, huh? And we have to do, because from the day the competitor starts with it, you don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. There's so many interesting insights, I think, and also technologies coming. It's great to know that MoveU is there. But Jan, that's all we have time for. So thank you very much for coming on this edition of the Forecourt Tech Podcast.
You're welcome.